Welcome to the Daily Word, verse by verse. Grab your Bibles and follow along as we continue in our study through the Gospel of John. Keep in mind, I'm using the Holman Christian Standard Bible, so if you're using a different translation, the read is different, but the message is the same. And one quick note, I'm still nursing a cold, so my voice is going to come off maybe hoarse, and I'm going to cough a little, so just ask for you please excuse that. All right, we're going to pick up our study in chapter 7. After this, Jesus traveled in Galilee since he did not want to travel in Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him. Now, I'm going to come back to this later in this chapter, but just make note that there is an active plot to kill Jesus. Verse 2, the Jewish festival of tabernacles was near. Now, this festival is celebrated in late September and early October, to give you a sense of the season. Verse 3, so his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea so your disciples can see your works that you're doing. For no one does anything in secret while he's seeking public recognition. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for not even his brothers believed in him. Now, if you remember in chapter 2, when Jesus attended the wedding in Canaan, and he turned water into wine, his mothers and his brothers were there. And they were traveling with Jesus at first. They went to Capernaum, and then they went to the festival in Jerusalem. After Jesus driven out the money changers, we no longer see his family with him. And we know from other scriptures that at one point they even came to do what we would call a family intervention. That they came to arrest Jesus. And not arrest him, but they wanted to seize control of him because they said he was out of his mind. And we see the hostility was even deeper. That notice they accuse him of seeking public recognition. And notice they distance himself from Jesus by saying, your disciples, show yourself to your disciples. Now, you also got to remember that Jesus' family grew up as devout Jews. Now, I say that because it plays a part culturally how people wanted to be accepted in the temple. We're going to see this even in this chapter, that there are a lot of people who want to embrace Jesus, but they fear the Jews. So it is sad that his own family at first did not accept him, though they saw the signs, they saw the testimony, and yet they now are rejecting him. Notice Jesus' response. Verse 6, Jesus told them, my time is not yet arrived, but your time is always at hand. The world cannot hate you, but it does hate me because I testify about it that its deeds are evil. Now that's quite an insult. In other words, you are part of the world that's evil. The world accepts you. Now, if you want to take it on a broader note, it's even interesting that the religious systems are a part of the world. And so to embrace a religious system, and you can always tell the difference between a religious system because it doesn't have a heart for God. And we're going to see this with the Pharisees. We see that even in the religion of Christianity, that many people follow the religion of Christianity but don't follow the real Jesus. Verse 8, go up to the festival yourselves. I'm not going up to the festival yet because my time is not yet fully come. After he said these things, he stayed in Galilee. After his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but secretly. And the Jews were looking for him at the festival, saying, where is he? And there was a lot of discussion about him among the crowds. Some were saying, he's a good man. Others were saying, no, on the contrary, he's deceiving the people. Still, no one was talking publicly about him because of fear of the Jews. So here is this cultural peer pressure. And the Jews had actually even put out an order that if anyone aligned themselves with Jesus, they would be excommunicated. Now, what is also interesting is that now Jesus is probably have a head covering on, so people are just not paying attention and really noticing him. And he's kind of hearing what people are saying about him. And it's amazing because what he has revealed through the signs, the wonders, and the teaching, this is what they're saying. It kind of shows you how people, again, how they receive, how they are listening, the kind of hearts that they have. And in this case, one of the interesting things that he is talking about with the conflict is people wanting to fit in culturally with the temple. They don't want to go against the Pharisees. Verse 14, when the festival was already half over, Jesus went up into the temple complex and began to teach. The Jews were amazed and said, "How does this man know scriptures since he's never been trained?" Now they had rabbinical schools. Even from a young boy, you could be taught in the school of the rabbis. You were taught the law. You were taught rabbinical customs. Okay, and so that's what they were referring to. How can Jesus know the scriptures? Now, also you have to remember that the scriptures weren't made public. They didn't have, like today, we have a Bible. I have several Bibles here. They didn't have it that way. If you wanted to know what the scriptures said, you had to go to the temple or the synagogue. And so they're wondering, how does Jesus know these things? The Pharisees didn't teach him. Verse 16, then Jesus answered, "My teaching is not mine, but the one who sent me. And if any man wants to do his will, he will understand whether the teaching is from God or if I'm speaking of my own." Now, remember, Jesus had the credentials. He had the credentials to be able to speak as a prophet, okay, which is, by the way, was one of the ways God communicated his message, his teachings, his revelation. Verse 18, the one who speaks for himself seeks his own glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. And notice they could not convict Jesus. They have to lie to say, okay, that he was a dishonest man. Verse 19, didn't Moses give you the law, yet none of you keep the law? Why do you want to kill me? Now remember, John opens this chapter up by saying they wanted to kill Jesus. Verse 20, you have a demon. The crowd responded, who wants to kill you? So you see that he's going to begin to expose them, their true thoughts, their true heart. Everyone knew there was a plot out to kill him. Verse 21, I did one work, and you are all amazed, Jesus answered. Consider this, Moses had given you circumcision, not that it comes from Moses, but from the fathers, meaning Abraham. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses won't be broken, are you angry at me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Stop judging according to outward appearances, but judge according to righteous judgments. Now, he kind of puts this paradox. On the one hand, the law says, do not do any work on the Sabbath day. So the physical act of circumcision would have been doing a work. Yet, the law also says that if a male child on the 8th day had to be circumcised. And so what do you do if the 8th day fell on the Sabbath? Well, they circumcised him. So on the one hand, we're breaking the law to keep the law. Now, Jesus said, so if I heal a man on the Sabbath, how is that wrong? In other words, how? And by the way, keep in mind, these are the interpretations of the law. This is what the Pharisees are saying. These are the interpretations of the Pharisees and not God. So we're going to see again, Jesus is going to call them out on their hypocrisy and on their hard-heartedness. That's what's going on here. All right, we'll pick it up at verse 25 in the next study. I'll see you then.